Okay, so let me begin by uh, welcoming all of you to this meeting, which is essentially to as a remembrance, or you can even say uh, a celebration of the life of Richard Cash. And uh, we were for the last 15 minutes actually chatting, and it was very obvious from that chat that there are so many facets to his life uh, that any discussion around his life, his contribution is necessarily going to be uh, with full of variety. I was also saying that when people pass away, and when you read about their lives in the obituaries, you often come to know more about their lives. And for me personally, I will perhaps be one person in this group who knew him in a sense the least. I have met him 4 or 5 times, interacted with him. I heard his talks. Uh, Visited him once in at his Harvard office. But many of you know him much more uh, personally and more know his work much better. So I have been given the job today of starting with a kind of slightly formal introduction to his life, so that some of us who may not know us, all the aspects uh, may want to know a little more. And I have therefore done some little bit of what I would say background reading on his life. And uh, I think he uh, to begin, and if one has to begin from his early life, he was born in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, where he spent his childhood. It's a family of East European Jews who had fled the pogroms, and apparently from a very early stage in his life, he had a interest in the sciences, the natural sciences. He left Wisconsin to study medicine in New York City, from the New York University School of Medicine, and did his internship at the famous Bellevue Hospital in New York. But I think what he really is known for, and it's interesting that after his internship, he chose to actually move to fieldwork in Dhaka. At that time, I think it is Pakistan, to work at the Cholera Research Laboratory, which now is the ICDDR. Uh, Now, his work in Bangladesh and his work with with colleagues in the field of cholera diarrheal research is I think very well known. And in fact, I was looking up the obituaries which are pouring in from all across the world, and clearly people uh, are largely talking about his contribution to that work. And of course, that's in public health, that's, I guess, spectacular work, the whole idea of ORT. But it's interesting that his engagement with Bangladesh seems to have been much more, because it didn't stop at that research, but it is a huge advocacy. And the news is full of what all he did in Bangladesh and how many times he visited Bangladesh and sort of made Bangladesh almost like his second home. So he seems to have had a very strong connection with South Asia. And in that sense, it is fitting today that there are two groups which are hosting today's meeting. One is IJME, FMES in India, and the Center for Bioethics and Culture in SIOT in Karachi. I'm in Mumbai. They are in Karachi. We are 1 hour away by flight, but we can't uh, meet each other in person. Um, I think the other aspect of Richard's interest and work maybe is a little less known, and which is his interest in research ethics. Uh, he, at some stage, started focusing on research ethics along with his public health work. And as Sunita was telling me whilst we were waiting, that he came out with this case book on ethical issues in international health research, which apparently is very well known, which is a WHO publication. And I remember him listening to him about on research ethics, but in a very interesting manner, because ethics sometimes can be very, and I say this slowly, uh, but can be very boring when people give didactic talks. But I particularly remember listening to Richard Cash twice, and both times he used live case studies from the field to talk about research ethics, and that made it extremely uh, interesting and valuable way. And I think. It is this aspect of his engagement that maybe we'll discuss a little more into today, because many of you have had that connection with him. A few other things about his life, which I had heard but also read a little bit. So, uh, apparently married at the age of 60. Now, I don't know, and that's also something interesting. But what is even more interesting is he met his current wife, Stella, at an Ayurvedic spa in Kerala. Now, uh, I don't know, I didn't know that whether it was Richard Cash who was wanting the Ayurvedic treatment or it was Stella, but she was a yoga instructor, a Swiss writer, and they and had developed an interest in Indian mythology. So apparently, she and Richard shared this common connection with India, and they traveled a lot in India, including circumambulating Mount Kailash on foot alongside the pilgrims. So, I mean, there is a lot of descriptions of as a traveler. So it looks like he was an extremely avid traveler, traveled through the Mongolian steppes, Namibia, etc., and the Silk Route in China. And when they would often, and that's what I read in a particular orbit, which I came across, that when they would go to some of these places, he would be more interested uh, in the toilets, because that was his public health interest. And Stella used to often tease him that, here's so many beautiful things here, but you're focusing on the toilets. He was also an Asian art collector, a jazz aficionado, a sports fan. I think everyone in the US is loyal to some team. So his team was the Green Bay Packers, books, movies, etc., etc. So overall, a life full of varied interests, and that I think came across in his personality. And before I invite some of you to speak, I always found his face a little mischievous. If I have to describe his face, I mean, he had a little bit of twinkle of mischief in his eyes, and I think that's what I that's a lasting memory of I have of him. Uh, so, with these few words about his rather colorful life, um, I am now going to invite some of you to speak. Some of you have already expressed an interest in speaking. So, I will call upon you one by one, not necessarily in any particular order. I've just been given a list. We have been given a list by Amar. So, and I think one of you, that is uh, Shiv Kumar, wants to leave early. So maybe I'll start with him. I have a brief introduction, but you're an economist and you uh, taught or used to teach at Harvard. So maybe you can take over now and you can tell us your memories or what you want to say about Richard.
Thank you so much. This is a wonderful occasion for all of us to meet. I'm seeing many of you for the first time. There are so many professional things to talk about Richard, but today I want to say a few words about Richard, the person I knew. By the way, I met Richard frequently a few months ago between July and September, and my last visit to his house was on September 5th. I've known Richard for close to 45 years, and over these years, we became very close friends. Let me remember Richard in about, very briefly, about 5 or 6 different ways. The first is I'll always remember Richard as being one of the kindest and most caring persons I have known. He had a warmth and a charm that made him so endearing to people of all ages, and he had this extraordinary knack of keeping even children as young as 5 years old and 6 years old engrossed in deep conversation. Second, I will always remember Richard as one of the most generous people I have known. Most of his friends, and I think some of you here, have stayed in his house at 30 Carver Street. We all called it the Cash Inn because we all used to get there and stay for free. And every summer for over 25 years, and I've been going to Harvard to teach, I would stay in a second floor apartment. I had a key to his apartment, which I kept with me and brought to Delhi every year and took it back to Cambridge, only to find out that I was no exceptional friend. All his friends had keys to Richard's apartment. Third, I will always remember Richard as a fantastic teacher. I took his class on epidemiology when I was doing my PhD at Harvard. And I must say, even to an economist like me, he made a lot of sense and kept me captivated and equally alert in class. He was a guru in the Socratic method of teaching. He would pose a series of open-ended questions, encourage students to think critically and develop their own ideas. Four, I'll always remember Richard as a man of great taste and talent, as was mentioned. He had style. He was a very good dancer. He was very well read. He had a great sense of humor. He loved to travel. And he particularly was fond of collecting exquisite art objects from across the world. His apartment in Cambridge was like a mini museum with wonderful art pieces from Bangladesh, India, South Korea, Japan, and other countries. Five, I will always remember Richard for his ability to instigate a debate in his very calm, cool style. He would love to trigger off a conversation by asking a simple question. But very soon you will find everyone shouting on top of each other. Richard enjoyed listening to different viewpoints, always remained calm, held on firmly to an ethical position, and asserted his opinions with grace and civility. Finally, I will remember Richard for the most important decision he took in his life. He got married to Stella, and as was mentioned, at the age of 60. When he spoke about getting married, many of his close friends, including me, counseled him, Richard, marriage is not easy. Think about it deeply. Don't be in a rush. Stella, for over 20 years, brought extraordinary joy into Richard's life. She also brought much needed order to Richard's life. Those of you who know Richard, for one, after marriage, started showing up for meetings and dinners almost on time. I don't think he wanted to break his record of always being late for every meeting. Both Stella and Richard loved to spend time in India and meet with friends. The last few months have been extremely difficult for Stella, but it was extraordinary the way she cared and looked after Richard until the last day. Stella, I'm sure you will remain our link to Richard. And thank you, Richard, for sharing so much of your life with us. Thank you for this opportunity to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you for those words. And I'll now move on to, okay, so Sarojini is here, right? Sarojini?
Yeah, Sanjay, I'm here.
Right. Please go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it's like, Amar actually introduced Richard and to me and Summer, and it was way back, I think it's in 2009, if I remember correctly. And he was extremely supportive of our work on, that time we were working a lot on the regulation of clinical trials and looking into the, ethics and also talking about the violations which were happening in the country at that point of time in the context of clinical trials. So he attended many of our seminars and meetings, and also, on the issues of technologies, he was very keen. And in fact, I remember like I was going through, last night, the email exchanges. I have many of them, in fact. He had gone through one of our fact-finding report on the demonstration project, and I could find, many exchanges on that, including he congratulating, email to me about our publication EPW. He's so humble. He said it was really helpful in my getting a full understanding of the events and all the issues involved. That's what he wrote. A very sweet email. In fact, I treasure it. He invited me, the most important thing for me is me and my colleague Brinda Marwa, who's right now in US, to give a lecture for the Women, Gender and Health group at HSPH in Boston on gender-related and public health research and also practices issue. We had a lovely time with him and his colleagues and students there. We spent at his place. This also made me, realize that Richard was not looking only at bioethics. That's how, I get to know him in the beginning, but also intersecting with gender equality and public health. So that was quite something, I feel, that interaction there in his own space, that made a huge difference for me to see the other side of Richard. A very friendly, humble, caring, as Shiv said, and a wonderful person who contributed to the research ethics and public health. I came to know from Amar recently, about his illness, but never anticipated that he would pass away so soon. And my condolences to his family and friends. I recall, one, maybe, others, Neha and others might remember this, when we had the NBC3 in Delhi. He came with a script of a play or poem, and which we felt like he's taking too much time. He was very creative. He really wanted to do that play. Finally, I don't think we did that in the main program, but we did give him space in the informal thing. And one day he came with Amar to my place for dinner a decade ago, and he was quite excited to learn about the jazz and the musical interests of my son, and we had quite a bit of exchange. So I deeply saddened to hear about Richard passing away, and my condolences with everyone. Thanks, Sanjay.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarojini. So I have three other names. So Veena is here, right? Veena Vaswani. Veena, you're there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
please go ahead.
So, yeah, thank you. And actually, our interaction with Richard was only through Amar, who provided us the external window to the bioethics world when we started the program. Actually, whether it was a national or international faculty, they were all introduced because through Amar, who is to bring them. So we had Richard Cash, who was the first international faculty to our center, and he was teaching research ethics. The way he interacted with people was so very humble that we had the researchers who lined up to meet him. We also had ethics committees who wanted to meet him, and even the community medicine. And in one particular day, Amar and Richard went around meeting everyone tirelessly. That's one thing I remember of a person very down to earth. And especially when he taught community engagement program, he was literally immersed into it. He didn't have to say anything that sounded plasticky, but it was more imbibed and imbued with his own personal experiences. When he was here, in fact, I have been in Mangalore for 20 some years, but he attended a Bhuta Kola. Every community event that would happen, he would make it a point to attend. I have not been able to attend. That shows the seriousness of a person who wants to be a part of the community, engage with them, understand them without just labeling them. Because many people, even today, look at some of these cultural programs and say they don't hold water. But I looked at him in a way that, wow, here's a person. The saying, Yatra Vishwa Tatra Bhavyate Needam, where the whole universe becomes a bird's nest. So to him, whether it was Bangladesh or India or US or UK, it was just a bird's nest. So he has left a huge amount of inspiration for us to take from and the pathways to lead on. So I'm thinking that celebrating his life should inspire us to do better and follow his footprints. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Veena. We have two or three other names before, of course, I move on to some of our IJME CBEC colleagues. is Roli Mathur here or Dr. Nandini Kumar? Are you there? I can't see them in the list.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I don't see them. Yeah.
fair enough. And Dr. Thankapan from Sri Chitra, because he was keen to speak. Is he here? Are you there? Okay, so if you are not here, we will, of course, move on to our very own people. And maybe, whom do I start with? So I'll start with Neha. Neha, please go ahead.
Um, Hi, I'm sure a lot of people will talk about his work in bioethics. So I'll talk about one facet of uh, Richard, which I think I had the most access to, and that was his exploration of Mumbai. I mean, he somehow appointed me as the guide to the city, and he wanted me to take him everywhere and show him the everyday life, not the touristy or the academic parts, which Amar did. I didn't do that any. So once I remember that he wanted to board the suburban train, so I took him, and to give him the full experience, I actually took him during rush hour, and I think for about 2 minutes he was hanging from the door for moving train, and he was totally terrified. And I remember that people actually got down from the train to berate me, how I could do, risk his life like that. But I think that for me was really what was very unique about Richard was his curiosity. I mean, he was interested in everything and everybody. And I mean, I think most of us will remember that, given a choice of eating at a hotel or eating at our house, he would prefer the second option because he got to see our family, to see how we lived, our friends, meet our friends and our families. So I think that is something that I really remember most about him. Uh, uh, Interestingly, even my connection with him is very closely associated with toilets. So he came to my Sayok, the school that we ran for girls, and he saw me arguing with the landlord because we were trying to construct a toilet out there, and he was very very amused that when I told him that we can't get a donor because nobody wants to pose in front of the toilet. So he immediately posed in front of the toilet and gave us the money for it. And then, of course, he became our, permanent toilet sponsor. So every time we wanted a toilet, you just send a message to Richard, we need another toilet. Please send over some cash. And he says, well, since my name is Cash, I have to, there's no choice. So he had only one request from us that the toilet should be very pretty. And I'm very happy to say that if you do your business in the Sayok toilet, you'll be surrounded by dolphins and sea creatures, and it meets his expectations. So I think that's what I remember most about Richard. And if there's something which I've learned from him, it's to value relationships for themselves. I mean, as we go through life, I think we meet a lot of people, but most relationships don't last, once they've outlived their usefulness. But I think because he was so curious, he was interested in everything that you were doing. So if you are not doing what he is doing, he was interested in what you are doing. So I was just going through my letters to him, and I've written to him about my daughter's first day at school or the trees outside my house. And he has replied to every single mail of that kind as well. So, and of course, he was my daughter's sort of honorary grandfather. Lots of gifts for her. And she actually believed that he was Santa Claus because he was the closest person that she had seen, to looking like Santa Claus. So she still has memories of him, though she didn't meet him too often once he had grown because of the lockdown and because I drifted away from IJB. But I think that part of him of valuing every relationship for itself and not for what it gives you is or what it might yield for you is I think something which I've tried to imbibe in my life. And now at the stage in life where I am, I have my own community of past students and mentees and people who work with me, people who I have helped to you know train. And sometimes they pop up, they send a message or they call up, and usually it's just to say hi or to share some news. or to crib about a job or a marriage or something like that. Nothing, no agenda as such. And I feel very happy, not because it has any it has any, motive or any interest, but just because they connected. And I think that's the time when I feel very close to Richard. And I think that is what I really want to remember about him. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you. That was really a very personal account. Yeah, and by the way, like, congratulations for getting him onto a Mumbai local. I mean, I must my
He
admiration for
got
you
to
has.
the other one, which was not in the rush hour, in the opposite direction. So he managed to
Okay.
travel on the train.
Not that it matters, if you're a Mumbai person, that doesn't matter whichever hour. But yeah, and I think I also remember a long car ride with him. I think he gave a talk in IIT Mumbai. I think was and Amita Pitre was with me. Where is she? So we had a long ride to Bandra, and on the way he was inquiring about everything that was going past us. And I particularly remember we were going past Powai and the grotesque new construction called Hiranandani, which you see on one side. And I just remembered that we had a long discussion on how Mumbai is growing, and we had a great he was listening to us with great interest. But anyway, I shall not go back because there's a lot of others. So I'll now call, whom should I call? So maybe we'll have our friends from across the border. So Amir, would you like to come on? And Amir is, of course, in a sense, our host. He's hosting this Zoom meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so this is also going to be somewhat of a personal account. So I met Richard for the first time. I saw him in 2001, and I thought he was 95 years old. His appearance has always been that for me. But he was sharp as in the mind, always sharp. Even though I have never been to a meeting in which he has not dozed off. Even the meetings that he was himself hosting at the Harvard School of Public Health, he would doze off, miss chunks of it, but still he was able to join all the dots together. So the one thing that I remember about him is always taking notes which no human being could decipher. He would be writing things and making cases out of everything. Every story was taken down, and he would show it to me in a class. And I could see what language is this guy written in, and he would make a case out of that. It would be such an exciting case. So he, of course, published with the WHO handbook of cases, which we always use. So my interaction with him was first time when he came to Karachi. I missed meeting him in Kerala when my colleagues from Pakistan, Karachi, Rubina is here, Asim, they went off over there. I could not go for whatever reason. But when he came to Karachi, that was my first interaction, and he immediately said, "You're interested in bioethics? I'm doing this thing at Harvard School of Public Health. We have this NIH-funded thing. You should apply." So I applied, and my visa never came through. So there were four of us that were selected for this, and I could not make it. But he was kind enough. He did not know anything about me still, but he was kind enough to defer my admission till for the next round. And in the next round, I arrived there with one Cambodian and two Chinese and one Pakistani, and all without a penny in their pockets. And because for some strange reason, these Boston people thought that we would be coming loaded and we would be able to spend the first month on our own, and we would be getting our stipend at the end of the month. That was not going to happen, and he actually paid us all from his own pocket and sustained four people. I had some support because my family was over there, but that is the kind of guy he was. I am also quite convinced, apart from him being 95, I'm quite convinced that he had not seen snow for the past 50 years. Every summer he was in this subcontinent. He was always over here, and he was so continentalized that he would have chawal, rice, and dal and fish with his fingers, and meticulously. putting us to shame. In fact, he had a choice when he came to teach our students in our center, the Center of Biomedical Ethics and Culture. He came over here with Mala and Amar to teach, and he had a choice to stay at a hotel or at my place. He said, "No, I'm going to stay at your place." As Neha was saying, he wanted this was a very natural choice for us. And my daughter was a little girl at that time. It was some similar story as Neha's. So there's Uncle Richard who has a lot of cash. And again, the Santa Claus connection was made at my home also. And he really, because my daughter was quite little, so he was able to convince her that yes, he is indeed Santa Claus. So that was the kind of guy he was. We took him, so he came to our center over here to teach, and I used to introduce him as the Sachin Tendulkar of bioethics. That description fit him even though he was 95. That description fit him absolutely perfectly. And because he was the embodiment of, and he had that kind of energy and that kind of prolific persona as Sachin had in cricket. We took him to Nairobi for our program that we have with Kemri, the center, our center in Kemri, running a program over there also, and he loved it. And the best part of that was that he also brought Stella along. And that was a wonderful experience for him. Because of health reasons, he could not go there again. But so he was always supportive of us throughout, in Karachi, in Nairobi, in all our academic stuff. And he was extremely supportive and encouraging when in our endeavor of our center to make movies. We use movies, and that is another passion he had. He used to use movies to teach. Welcome Trust had made some sort of a movie, and he's used that till for all our students initially, and he would encourage us, and we actually started making our own movies, and we would send them to him for critique, and he would give very, very detailed positive feedback, and he would use our movies in his sessions also. So overall, I think an academic experience was always there, but there was always this personal link with Uncle Richard, which we will always cherish and remember him with. So I think that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. So I will go on now to, as you can see, I'm going up, I think, by seniority. Maybe I needed some order in my mind. But so, Mala Ramnathan, you're there, of course.
Very much.
Yeah, okay.
I have similar stories, but a little bit more on his public health work. Because while he was my teacher, I was one of the fellows. Amir is, in theory, my classmate, but he joined 1 year later. So we always had a chair for Amir in the room. One of the chairs was yours, and we'd keep talking about you. And because we had no pictures, we had only an imaginary Amir till I came to the Aga Khan conference and met you. And I had known Richard a wee bit before that because he was teaching infectious disease epidemiology at Achyuta Menon Center from the late 90s. And that's how he encouraged me to apply for this program when it came up, because I was already working with Amar on the guidelines for social science research in health. And I learned when I went to Harvard a unique style of teaching, which you said Socratean approach. But the other thing which I learned was the need to simplify jargon and the need to use examples to bring home what we are trying to explain to people who are listening, and to use examples from the things which we have ourselves done in order to facilitate an ownership of it, and therefore easy translation. When I say translation, I don't mean linguistic translation, but explaining it simplistically for people to understand. And that is one thing I learned which will remain with me because it really changed the way I teach. And the other interesting thing that, because Richard, as you all pointed out, God was a part of our lives. And, you know, we talk very easily about ethnocentrism. He was the first person that I actually knew who practiced avoiding ethnocentrism. And for those of you who don't know, it is the way we look at other cultures as being somewhat lesser than our own is called ethnocentrism. And we ask people to respect other cultures the same way we do ours. And he is the first person that I saw demonstrating. And that is a phenomenal skill, which I strive to acquire, but I don't know that I've achieved the kind of Zen equilibrium that he had, which we all should emulate, but, you know, fall somewhere below the mark. And he is my benchmark for that. The other interesting thing is not only was it my family, my son, because he was a little too old to believe in Santa Claus when he met Richard. Richard took him, minded him when he was a kid, basically because I was a person who wanted to see all the museums in Boston and I couldn't drag my son along. So he stayed with Richard and did all kinds of outdoorsy things in his garden. And Richard has always been a person in his life, because when my son decided to get married, the only other outside family person to whom he introduced his girlfriend was Richard. So that is the way he became a part of your life. The other thing which I think they had talked about his beneficence with regard to toilets. Richard, actually, something which very few people outside the Achyutaminan Center circle know this. Richard has financed an award in Achyutaminan Center for the best outgoing student, MPH graduate every year, and we still give that award every year for the best outgoing student. And that is called the Mohandas K, with the then director of AMC of Sri Chitra, and the Richard Cash Award for the best outgoing MPH student. And that is on the basis of the fund that he gave, and the interest from it is what we give that award all of our students even now. And that is something that will continue his work, in the area of public health, because it's a public health school which gives out an award in his name, which is supported by a grant from him. And very few people realize that the Mahidol Award, there is no Nobel Prize for public health. There's only one for medicine. The Mahidol Award that he has got, Prince Mahidol Award that he has, jointly with Mahalanobis and another person, Nathan, I think, Nalin, I don't know how to pronounce, is a person, the three of them jointly have the Prince Mahidol Award for ORS, and the phrase prize, which is for achieving the greatest good for the greatest number, totally public health. And while many of us are remembering him as a giant in bioethics, because, you know, the distinction between Richard's bioethics and other kinds of bioethics, which comes from philosophers, is Richard's bioethics is rooted in experience of people and his work with people. So there's less theorizing, there's more experiential, which speaks to a lot of us. That's why it's so distinct from other forms of teaching bioethics. And that is something that his legacy is the whole subcontinent teaching that we all do everywhere. And that is something that we need to remember him for. But last but not the least, I remember him for all the fun. He came with me to Western Odisha, where we don't have even a 3-star hotel. I was terrified. Ate in the roadside cafes. We call them shingadas. They are samosas, samosas which are different from the Punjabi samosas. He would eat on roadside with relish in a manner that even I can't do, licking his fingers of the chutney. His tolerance for chutney was better than mine, actually. And going adventuring with him into the rural parts of Western Odisha, I learned so much more about Western Odisha that I didn't know before. Because he was curious and I was his translator, I learned so much more about rural Odisha and joint efforts of making pots, in how much it is a family manufacturing rather than just, the kumhar manufacturing a pot. Is the amount of water to be added is something that is the familial knowledge, not necessarily the potter's knowledge. Mixing is done by the women there. I learned that only because of Richard's curiosity, because we were meandering in various villages within Sambalpur, rural Sambalpur. And that is another thing that I would, I learned to emulate, because it is that kind of adventuring that enabled me to bring experiences to anything that I say to my students. And that is a lasting legacy that I inherited from him as well. What else can I say? There was so much more to say, but I think all of us have enough to say, so I'll stop for now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mala. So, I mean, it's very clear, I mean, that as people speak, many lesser known aspects of his life. By the way, Mala, if you had samosas on the roads in Orissa, his experience with diarrheal diseases in ORS would have sometimes helped you, and maybe he knew that. But thank you for that very personal sharing. And I move on now to another of our friend from across, from 1 hour from Mumbai, but across a big border. So I invite Farhat Moazzam from Karachi to speak. Farhat, please.
Yeah, I'm sitting here and listening to everything about Richard, and I think Richard is here, and I can picture him as he would be in CBEC when he would come here. He would look over his glasses, and even sitting at the head of the table when he was teaching, he had a particular kind of a way of looking. And I can picture Richard here, and I hope Richard knows that his friends are here talking about him. I knew Richard for many years. I cannot even remember when I first met him, probably when I was doing my doctorate in the States. But we really got to know Richard when he started coming to CBEC, and he first came here to teach officially as a teacher when in 2010. That's the year we began our master's program in bioethics at the center. Prior to that, we had a PGD program. So in 2010, as we expanded our program and expanded the research ethics and public health module, that was the first year when Richard came here. And Mala and Amar will remember that these were our 3-star teachers for that module. And Richard, after that, came again in 2012, in 2014 to CBEC to teach. What I remember him, Richard, is Richard was, although he was very laid back, Richard had a streak of a rebel in him. He was in Harvard for so many years, and we would sit and talk about that. And he had although he was a member of that faculty, a lot of the things that he said about academia, about the posing in academia, the focus on how many degrees you had, he made so much sense. So he was a very laid back person, but he was very, very sharp. He was very curious, as people say. And that was one of the things that I admired about him. Although he'd been in Harvard so long, but he had his eyes open, and this applied wherever he went. Everybody has said he's very desi. We used to laugh and we say, Richard, tum to desi bande ho. And that showed also in the way when we took him out to restaurants, what he would do. I think he is one of the people I have met who I can say that he had tremendous integrity. There was no hypocrisy about Richard. He would tell you to your face if he disagreed with you, but never unpleasantly. He was a very popular teacher, as other people have said. He taught on cases. And he would kind of walk in at the morning of the module when he was supposed to teach, disheveled, and we knew him with his, he never had a tie on. I never saw him with a tie on. And he'd say acha. He knew things like acha, and he knew things like, he would sprinkle conversation with huh. And he would say, well, I have these cases. And some of those cases he would have thought of perhaps on his flight over here. And he taught with cases. He was provocative, never rude, and he got students to talk and to look at things critically, which is a tremendous talent that he had. So the only time I saw him a little unsettled was, Amir will remember that, we took him while he was here once deep into Sindh to show him around or whatever. And the SIUT driver who drove that van, and it was an uncomfortable van, he's known to drive with a wad of Naswar in his cheek. And that is his propelling force. And he drives like a banshee. And I remember Richard turning around and saying, tell him to slow down because I'm going to vomit. We conveyed that to the driver in Urdu. I'm not sure if he slowed down or not. I think that worked, and he slowed down. So anyway, Richard meant a great deal to us, and I'll stop where I started. Richard, I know you're somewhere around, and I hope you can hear some of the things that are being said, because in the final analysis, all of us come from the same place and we return to the same place. So we will miss him. He was a good man, a man of integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, Farat. Yeah, you said that when we were chatting before the meeting that the final analysis, he was a good man. I particularly remember what you described, that his specs would be halfway down and he would have that look, and yeah. So we have some requests
Excuse
from
me, here.
who's that? Issue needs to. Okay. So we have some more requests for people to see. Before that, we have one more speaker who's the boss of bioethics, and many of us are here partly because he connected us with Richard. So I'll ask Amar to speak, and then we will open it out for all of you. Amar.
Yeah.
Sure, Jane, we'll allow you to speak after Amar. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm not good at talking in the obituaries or writing obituaries. I haven't done ever, but this is the first time. Yeah. I think I was also there at NFI when they talked about it. I knew about Richard when I started my career in 1979 after finishing my graduation. I went into health policy and public health research, mainly social science and health system research. And I came to know about oral rehydration solution and his name. I was later on told that he had visited Foundation for Research in Community Health and its program in rural areas called Mandwa Project, Dr. Antya's Mandwa Project, which I didn't know till recently. But he was there. But I knew about uh, his, uh, I read his papers and those kind of stuff. I met him first time in late 90s, where Puna Muntraja has organized a meeting in Delhi, and I bumped into him there. He had called him there. And he has started teaching in Trivandrum, so he was available there. There are few things that happened between him and me. In the first meeting itself, I asked him that when did you start coming to this side of the world? He said 1969. And you know how I am. I have this tendency of pulling people's legs, so I did that. I said 69 going to Bangladesh is pretty suspect. I think, did you go to aid the revolution or you were sent by America to stop it? So he said, I'm still there. That shows that I did something different. And that is what was his response. I think that was one that made him my friend, because he was also, I think, influenced by Cuban Revolution during his studies, and that is what he said, that yes, he wanted to work with people simply because he realized that that was the right way to go about, and public health conviction is another part of it. Second thing that where we became very good, close to each other, was that I was not in academic, and he was in academic and yet not, as Farhad said just now, that he was a rebel. And he always remained a lecturer. I kept asking him, that was, I think, late 90s when I met him first time in outskirts of Delhi. I said, why aren't you professor as yet? And that was another way of pulling his leg. He said, why do I become professor? This is the position that gives me so much of flexibility, going around and doing things. So that is also me, because I also did not study after MBBS. I did not do my PhD. I said, do you have PhD? He said, no, I don't have. So both of us were on the same thing. But he did nudge me to go and work in Sri Chitra, Achyuta Menon Center. And he also nudged me to start teaching, and he helped me how to learn teaching. I was not a teacher when I went in 2001 to Achyuta Menon Center. But he on the emails and whenever we met, he really helped me doing it. From him, I learned two things. I think in bioethics, these are the two learnings are very important for everybody who are around and who are interested in bioethics in India. The first thing that I learned was that every issue has a context. Don't forget the context. Because of the universalism in bioethics, we sometimes become so esoteric that we go on arguing about principles, but we forget about the context where the story is unfolding. And if you do not take that into consideration, then you will never be able to do good justice to the people. And I think he kept telling me that the other part is that forget about all those lofty principles of autonomy and this and that. Concentrate on issue of justice which you are working in your country. This is the place where justice issue is the most important. Context and justice are, if you are predominantly dealing with them in your bioethics analysis, he kept telling me that you will not go wrong. And much of his work was of that kind. That doesn't mean that I and him did not have a lot of differences on the issue of bioethics. Actually, we used to argue against each other quite a lot. And he, being a very crafty teacher, he will use that to his advantage, that in his sessions, he will provoke me to talk against him. And we will be arguing in front of the students, and students will enjoy that, spectacle and participate in it. So that way, he really made a big contribution as far as understanding bioethics in developing countries is concerned. He is American, but he was not so strong adherent of the principalism of the America in bioethics. This is what I can say. He was very flexible about both theory as well as those principles. And that I like because that provided a lot of opportunities to learn. The last thing about, I think everybody has said about personal stuff. And yeah, he and I gelled quite well. And as a person, we went together. We loved good food, good outing with him, both to learn from the community as well as to enjoy in places like different places. So that is a very good part of him. The most important in those outing, I think he used to love traveling, but he used to love about learning about the culture of the people. I was in Kerala for 3 years. I would not have learned about Kerala culture as much as I did if he was not around. He will turn up and say that I have a car. He used to stay with in the director's house, so he used to get a car, easy access to car, and then the whole night he will take me to the temple festivals of different kinds to see them and learn from. And that's how I learned about Kathakali. I saw those things, but if on my own, I don't think I would have gone around. I'm not that kind of person. But with him, I learned, and also his point that going to people and learning the culture is very, very important in order to understand what are the best ethical way to understand a story coming from below. And he was a avid reader. He and I had to read a fiction every day kind of stuff, and the, the thing that we used to exchange with novels. You know, he will read something and he will send it to me, and I will send it to him, and that was the best thing that I missed. I will miss now because some of the novels that I have collected in my in my library have come from him because he will take me to in Delhi. He will take me to bookstall and pick up some books and say that why are you picking up? You have already read them. This is for you. You haven't read them as yet. And I used to get those books. So that thing about reading fictions and exchanging that literature was very, very a strong point. I yeah, I don't think I would like to say more than this. I think memories will remain all the time with us. But since this is FMES and IJME is organizing, let me tell you that his commitment to IJME, Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, was very, very strong. We have gone ups and downs, and from time to time he used to help us out. And he even financially he has helped IJME from time to time. When we were in a big crisis and we were planning to close down print issue, that was, I think, in the IJME's National Bioethics Conference in Bangalore. He came forward without telling anybody, and I don't think many people even in IJME know that he provided more than 100,000 rupees straight away, saying that don't close it down. Things will work out. Carry on for next 1 year, and then we'll see how it goes. And still it is there. That was 2014 conference. I think that was the 5th or 6th NBC in Bangalore when he came forward. Like me, he also never wrote a lot, but he loved talking. And that is where I think we had a commonality that you write less, but you interact more. And I think that way we loved each other in that manner. We used to talk meet on video call. Last 5 years we haven't met. Even the last time when I organized a training in Delhi for Harvard, he was supposed to come. That was, I think, 2023. He couldn't come up. and he did it online while I was there. So this is that I missed him, and when I talked to him last in March 2024 this year, he had come from Colombia and he was absolutely looking down. He said, I'm going through post-COVID depression. And as soon as I come out of it, I'll visit India and we will go around. But he never came out. And he was diagnosed with an incurable disease. And within 6 months, he went off. So I think it's a big loss at personal level for the public health as well as the bioethics. Thank you for calling me.
Thank
Stella
you.
is here. Richard's partner is here.
Yeah. I just saw her. So yes, I thought maybe maybe we could request you, Stella, if you would like to speak.
Can I speak?
Yeah.
I will say something very quickly. I need to go to the funeral home quickly. So I wanted just to listen to all of you and thank you so much. Where did Richard go? That we share the same the same love for Richard.
Okay, but
And
Richard,
thank you very much
Your
for all that
voice,
you do here.
voice is echoing, getting.
Yes. It's only that he was not depressed for COVID after COVID. No, he was over medicated for diabetes, and that was making him weak. And I knew that something else was going on, so I was trying to have a scan, an MRI, something like that, and that everybody think that the US has such a wonderful health system, but to get in to manage to do that is very difficult because you press 1, press 2, press 3, you call and call and call. It's very difficult to obtain that. And like in India, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, or South America, you need connections. And fortunately, through one of his friends that probably you know, John Roddy, he find a neurologist, and this person make that it was a scan was done. But until that moment, it was no diagnosis because the system didn't allow it. I got an appointment that was for now, October. So you see, sometimes things are special. So fortunately, we could do that, and we saw that it was lymphoma and that could be treated, but unfortunately, his body didn't allow the chemo, and then it was nothing else that we could do than to have him here at home afterwards to recover. And he had a good time at home in the beginning, and he recovered, and we were doing things, but then the illness took over and he passed. But anyway, thank you very much for thinking of him. He was definitely a very special person. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you.
So thank you for making that effort to come and listen. He was not just a teacher, a professional acquaintance, he was part of our family as well. For so many of us in India, in Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And this is a moment for all of us to come together, hold each other's hands and send our support, and to tell you also that you have a home in each one of our homes here in India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh. Anytime you come back, just let us know, and our homes are open to you.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about how he was my
Sure.
great.
So I was, so you are, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I also wanted to speak about how he was my great grandpa. I'm really sorry if I get emotional on here. He's like such a great person, and overall, he just was like the light in any situation. He always made me smile and laugh, even when I was really really sad. And he's like just a good person, and I wish he was here right now to see me graduate college. I have 4 kids. One is Sawyer, Janice, Candace, and yeah, he's just like a really great great grandpa, and I hope to meet him again one day in the future. And as you can tell, it's been a really hard time for me and my family. And we've really been trying to get through this loss, and we've been trying to stay positive and calm. And it's just been really, really hard. So I'm really sorry. You guys can start talking now.
Okay. Thank you, Jane. I'll just so we've already gone on for more than an hour, and of course there'll be many of you still keen to talk, and we will certainly give some time. My request is, of course, to be brief. So if now any of you who sort of were not listed but would like to share something, just open your mic and video, and then maybe or you can put your hand up. I mean, that way I can identify you. We can identify you if you wish to. Or just open your mic and video and speak. We'll keep it a little. Yeah. Yeah, is that was that Linda? Were you wanting to speak? Anyone else?
Yes, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, my name is Maha Jaffrey. I'm Amir's wife, and Richard stayed with us when he was in Karachi. And what I found really funny, I do remember that when he arrived, the next day we had a strike in Karachi. And I told them that, oh, tomorrow, Richard, you might have trouble in moving about in the city. And he said, oh, is there a hartal tomorrow? And I was like, yeah. And I was completely taken aback. And I said, yeah, hartal, exactly. So you know what it is. He says, yeah, of course I know. I know this from Bangladesh, and it's a hartal. That's also what you call it here. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what we call it here. That was one thing. The other thing that I found was very amusing, and I even shared it with my late father. As Amir pointed out, Richard used to eat with his fingers, and he used to really enjoy that. So when my daughter, who was very small at that time, saw him at the dinner table, said, oh, Uncle Richard, you just eat like my Bobby. That was my father. So she could basically see that just like her own grandfather, my late father also used to eat with his fingers. And Richard was the same. So that's a connection that she made. And it was absolutely lovely to have him here with us. He used to love to walk in our garden and spend time in there after he used to come back from his workshop and his meetings at CBEC here. And it was absolutely wonderful to have known him. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to say something? Stella is saying she'd like to go. Thank you, Stella, for joining us. And
Thank you so much, Stella, for joining.
So much. And it's so sad. Like, my kids miss him. I have 2 kids. One is 12 and 11. And
I can't hear you too well. Is that
she'll be like,
can't hear you too well at all. We can't hear you well at all. Okay, so Sunita, you haven't spoken?
No, I was not to. I find it difficult to speak. So I'm not going to speak, but I think if there's anybody, I see Geeta and you also had not wanting to point out, but yes, if anybody wants to come in.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Geeta?
I think Geeta Sen
I-
was there.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I've known Richard from, I think I first met him in 1901, and have met him over the years many, many times. I think I haven't reached Richard's age, but I feel, with each passing day, I'm getting up there. And so naturally, friends and others are sort of going in regular succession. But I think I've learned one thing, and Richard is the absolute epitome or model or whatever you want to call it of that. That how much people were aware that he was a good man. And as I wrote in the chat, no one can really ask for more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any of our friends from Pakistan? They're here. Okay, so I think we've gone on for what, an hour and 15 minutes, and it's been quite a roller coaster. A lot of you sharing personal opinion. I mean, as I said right at the start, I knew him, but I really don't have the claims to some of the experiences many of you have had. Is really, this is very illuminating about his personality. Sunita, you want to give any closing words? I mean, somebody said at the start that I think it was it Farhat? I don't know who said that we don't have to wait for people to die to meet this group. So maybe it's a reminder
Rubina
that
said.
we should meet. We will meet. Mala, you want to say something?
No, I was just telling you that Robina said that we should meet more
Ah,
frequently.
Robina said that. Robina
Yeah,
said
it
that.
was Robina.
Yeah, but is Robina there? If she would like to speak, otherwise we are closing. Robina? Okay. So thank you all of you for being here with us. And I think that just the last thing, because I was reading through some of the things on the net, and I think Stella has left, but I found that there'll be a memorial service for Richard on Sunday. And what I found remarkable was that it says that there'll be no flowers, that, and that people have been, there's an appeal by Stella for people to donate to NGO in Bangladesh. So as in life, as in death. Thank you all of you, and thank you again. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.